So the last few videos of this section, we're going to be moving on from layout and color and focusing on text. So let's get rid of all our styles and indeed our content so far. And we're going to start by seeing how we can change the font or typeface of our text. So let's start by adding a little bit of text. I'm going to use the phenomenally boring, this is some text. But you can use something even more exciting than that if you like. Now, of course, to style that, probably the easiest way is to set up some styles for our P tags. And before I do anything new and fancy, I always like just to check that everything's kind of connected up right. So you might do something like font size 200%. And then just have a look. There we go. So this CSS is definitely connecting to this content. So even if I have a problem with my font changing CSS, I know that it's not down to an issue that I've spelled style like that or something like that. So that's a good trick that I always use before I'm doing something new. So changing the font with CSS is pretty straightforward. We use the property font family. Now the challenge with font family is that you have to remember what the font families are. Now fortunately, my text editor here has given me a few that I can work with. So let's go for fantasy to get something that hopefully will look completely different to plain old text. And there we go. You can see this is definitely a different sort of font than what we would have got without it. So now we've changed the font, but how do we know what fonts are available other than the ones that happen to appear in the drop-down list? Well, I would do a quick Google of web safe fonts. And then the top result for me is this w3schools.com link, which is perfect. And then this will give you a list of the fonts that are pretty safe to use. That means they're supported by most browsers. So we've got Georgia here, Palatino, Linotype, Times New Roman, and sans serif. That means without little ticks. So Arial, Arial Black, Comic Sans, etc. And a couple of monospace fonts as well, in which all of the characters have the same width. They're particularly good if you want to display code on your website. So you can try some of those out. Let's just pop on one. We'll try Arial, just because it looks different once again than what we have. So Arial. There we go. Let's refresh. There we go. So that's what Arial looks like. Now you'll notice though that most of these in fact have not just one, but they have several different ones. Most have three. So we've got Times New Roman, Times and Serif. Now this is actually a really nice feature of CSS fonts and it's known as fallback. So if the Times New Roman font is available on the system of whoever's looking at your website, then it will display the text with Times New Roman font. If not, it'll fall back to the Times font. And if it doesn't have that, it'll fall back to the standard serif font, whatever that is on the machine of your user. So if you're going to change fonts, it's always a good idea to have several different ones so that you can be sure that you're getting something that looks close to the font that you really want, even if they haven't got the perfect font already on their system. So you should always have several different font families, getting increasingly more general as you go across the commas like that. So that's pretty much it when it comes to web safe fonts. You'll notice though that there's not a huge number of these, and if you're really picky about what you want your website to look like, there might not be one there that's close enough to the vision that you have in mind. So I'm going to show you as well how to use Google Fonts, which is a huge range of free to use fonts that you can find just by Googling Google Fonts and then click on the top result. It should take you to fonts.google.com, and Google Fonts looks like this. So it's really well organized. You can see how all the fonts look, and you can use categories on the left to identify particular types of font that you're interested in, and then you can use any one you like in your web pages. So there's a particular one that I like, so I'm going to choose the search option and then search for shadow, and this shadows into light font is the one I'm going to use. I think it's very nice. But the process of getting it onto your web page is exactly the same regardless of which font you want. So first off, just click the plus button and you'll get this little box appear at the bottom saying one family selected. You can select more than one if you want, but I'll just keep to the one. And then you can see we've got this embed font section here. So all we need to do is copy that code. We'll explain what it means in a minute. And then we go back to our HTML page, and then you can paste this in anywhere in the head section. It will actually work anywhere in the document, but normally we put our fonts and other styles in the head section. So you can see what this is doing is essentially bringing in a style sheet. That is some CSS, and it's getting it from this URL here, fonts.googleapis.com/CSS. And then you can see we've got what's known as a query string, that is a question mark, and then family, and then the name of our font family there. So that will bring in the font code to our page, but how do we actually use it? Well, to use it, we go back to our Google Fonts page, and then you can see here in the specify in CSS, we've got the CSS code that we need to bring that into our page. So just select that, Control C or Command C, and then we just replace our font family Fantasy, which is what we had before, to that code. Our font family is now going to be Shadows into Light and Cursive. So save that, go back over to our web page, and when you refresh it, you can see we've now got that very nice font. Excellent. So you can now add any font you like. Feel free to experiment a little and try out some different fonts from Google Fonts or elsewhere. But for now, we're going to move straight on to customizing text in more detail with styling text in the next video.